So this is an ironic circle here. I went to work there, and we had a thing called Drag Racing Dragsters Top 10 List.
Mm-hmm.
I think I got one here.
Is that the West Coast, East Coast deal? What year are we at now in this?
This is 66. Okay, here's the National
Yep.
Drag Racing poll.
Yep.
Wasn't a poll, we made it up. We made it up by reading the drag papers,
Uh-huh.
what have you. And you can see here, well, you can't see, but I'll leave it for you.
Yep.
The top 10 West was the Surfers.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Job here.
Yes, indeed.
First time they had beat out Leon, Black, and Snively.
Mm-hmm.
And I took that information before it was published, because I wrote most of the articles, everything but the clutch article in this piece I did,
Oh, really?
including captions. I did everything. There's a piece on Zuchel. There's a piece on the Hawaiian. There's a piece on Junior Thompson. And Holly did the clutch dual drives for dragsters. Dual clutches. That's when the dual clutch was starting to hit. And I told Roland at the drag races on Saturday night that the Surfers had ousted him from the #1 position. And Hedrick had a fit when he found out, because the first thing Roland did was go tell him. So he called me in the office the next day and fired me. And I said, "You're going to fire me for what?" "Well, you disclosed pieces of information that shouldn't have been disclosed." And I says, I didn't do anything that was wrong. You can't fire me for that." "Well, yes, I can." Well, right after that, I found out that he was still working for Keith,
Mm-hmm.
and Leong's car was #1, and the Surfers became #1, and then the connection became very clear. Simultaneously, the publishing house was in trouble. The Kimtex Publishing was the name of the company.
Mm-hmm.
And the guy from Oklahoma that was the major partner in the printer took it away from Kimsey and gave it to Hedrick to run as a separate company. That lasted about 60 days.
Hmm.
That all collapsed, and Hedrick was out. The magazine comes back to Kimtex. Lou Kimsey calls me, brings me back in. Durbin had defected, so he was no longer back in. I called Ralph. Ralph was the drag strip manager at the writer for Lions, but he and I were pals.
Goodall?
Goodall.
Yeah.
I brought him in, and we put the magazine together. And we put like 2 years worth of magazines together. And we had some of the greatest times known to man, because it was just the two of us, and we put whatever we want. And during the 66 Hot Rod Magazine meet at Riverside, I wrote a piece called Viking Hats Riverside Weekend. And it was a story about all the things that went wrong at that race. And I had pictures of stock cars steaming over and dragsters in line for miles around the bend. And I said, the caption was, "Stockers steam while dragsters fume." And I had a picture of Ray Bach picking up a cone that somebody had run over in the lights. And I said, everybody at Hot Rod had their job. And the race was really between Vic Brown in Rocky Gambino's car and a slew of Hawaiians. I mean, I think there were 3 Hawaiians at that event.
Probably the Sorokin one. No, wait a second. How late in the year was it?
Midsummer.
66?
Mm-hmm.
No, yeah, Sorokin.
Well, it was the time. It was the race that Keith sawed the verticals out of the car.
Yeah, Roland tells a good story about that.
Yeah, and that's
One of the Hawaiians.
right.
Yeah.
And so I wrote the whole story about Vic Brown. And I had pictures of the Hawaiian in different stages with the rails cut and not cut. And I said the Hawaiians were coming out of the woodwork. And I had Vic Brown runner-up. I had pictures of him and all this. And I never mentioned the Hawaiians other than to say they were coming out of the woodwork. And that I mentioned that they won, but it didn't make a big deal out of it. And what I'm doing is I'm sticking the needle up Hollywood's right? He did me wrong. This is my turn, right?
Sure.
And so then, because of that, I got on the wrong side of Keith because of whatever they told Keith. And of course, I picked up with Purcell and Broussard and all of those guys who were ex-Keith runners, and Slabajar and all those names that they had for Keith. And I would use from time to time. And then Howard, who had regarded Keith as a starter and generator man, and referred to him regularly like that because of a boat incident years before. And so I was out with the needle. And in that piece, I drove a Pontiac, a 400 Firebird Pontiac. And when I turned onto the freeway to go to the races, I stood on it. And essentially nothing happened, just kind of went, and I cut it to pieces. And the Pontiac, in the editorial, I think I said something like, I stepped on it and nothing happened. And the Pontiac people got pissed. And they canceled their advertising.
Oh, no.
And it got a lot of noise made about it. And Kimsey called me in, and he says, I just read this thing, and I got this thing from Pontiac. They're canceling their odds. You caused a lot of trouble. And Ralph says, he made some waves. and it went a little bit further in the conversation. He says, well, the Wavemaker here, he can, and Kimsey went along with it. Kimsey thought that the publicity and the stir that it caused was worth it, because other people, Frank Wiley came by, he was the head of PR for Chrysler. He came and bought ads with engine ads, and the Ford people came by and bought engine ads, and it moved off of a gratuitous Pontiac ad to real participation of advertising relative to the sport that we were dealing with, which was Chryslers and overhead cam Fords. So that really turned things around, and so Ralph says, why don't you write a column called The Wavemaker? Why not? I searched around each month for a topic to pick on that wouldn't offend anybody but would get the point across. And if there was somebody I wanted to stick the needle in, that's when I would do it. And I wrote about the restrooms at Orange County, a first-class racetrack with Renekins that you couldn't go near. And I wrote about racetrack food at any place other than Urbandale, because pretty much everywhere else was hot dog soaking in this really ugly water with a layer of castor oil on the top, stuff like that. And then Dale Ham proposed to shorten the drag strip to 1,000 feet. And I really took him to task for that. I said, given the racetracks back in your Division 4, I can understand why you wanted to shorten them to 1,000 feet, because that's about all you could stand with the various lumps and sliding off the racetrack because of the crown, because they ran mostly airports back then.
Yeah.
Well, he wanted to punch me out when he saw me at the Winter Nationals that next year. And I got this Hasselblad hanging around my neck. And I said, well, we can go outside. And he kind of crawfished a little bit and then thought better of it. And then Partridge grabbed him by the arm and pulled him in and said, leave him alone. He said, don't pay any attention to him and leave him alone.
The press will really get bad.
Exactly. So that was the start of the Wavemaker. And we went along, produced some of the great drag racing magazines. If the era that you like is the era that we did the drag racing magazines. And I did pieces on Jeep. I did pieces on, I did 2 funny cars. I did Butch Leal's funny car. I hated them. I did fiberglass.
Yeah, no.
The funny cars.
The funny
I
cars,
did
yeah.
Fiberglass Trends Corvair and Butch Leal's Barracuda with the unblown motor in it. And after that, we started taking them apart with signs like "Funny Cars Suck" and just beat up on them unmercifully. Yeah. And then we had the one year we had the Car of the Year and the Winners and Losers of the Year. And Ralph and I sat down and did it ourselves. We didn't use any kind of a board or a select committee. We did it. We picked James Warren.
Yep, remember.
And Karen Nelson did a story on James Warren, and Jaduga did the drawings.
Yeah, remember the drawings.
And then we had all these losers, and we named lots of people that we thought were in the business or losers. Mostly corporate people, not so much drag racers. We didn't want to call drag racers losers. We mentioned little guys on several occasions. And
Little guys, as in little guys.
little
suck.
guys suck. Yeah, that's a whole nother story. That was a result of the UDRA meet at the Tahitian Village. And there's a board of directors of all top fuel guys except Gary Cagle, who ran a Roadster, and Old Man Freeman, who ran a Junior Fueler. And there's some guy sitting in the audience, and we're talking about payout and putting the pressure on A, Lions, and B, the NHRA to pay round money and what have you. And Top Fuel should get this, and this. And somebody, I think it was Bill Butters, he holds his hand up and says, what about us little guys? And Zucho goes, little guys suck. And it broke the room up, right?
Oh, sure.
So the next day, I'm over at Donovan's, and me and Dawes are getting together. Dawes Wafer's his name. And he says, let's make some T-shirts. So I called Shellac in, and I said, we're going to make some T-shirts. So I went out and got a gross of T-shirts that said, little guys suck. And I brought them back to the shop, and we sold them to people and gave them to people. And I gave one to Amos Satterley for his kid. He wanted them small for the kid. And he went to Lions, and Hart threw him out. You can't come in here with that. And of course, we all had the same T-shirt on. We just had a Pendleton on over the top of it, right? And we go.
That's beautiful.
It caused great consternation at that point. That was actually the first dirty T-shirt. There were never any offensive T-shirts prior to that. They were all nice and advertising, and you know. But that was the first of the nasty T-shirts.
Yeah, it's cute.
Anyway, I worked with Ralph.